This is the Marriage Podcast, and I'm your host, Alexandra Stockwell. I'm a physician turned relationship and intimacy expert, and I specialize in showing couples how to have incredible, passionate relationships. I myself have been married for 25 years. My husband and I have 4 children and full professional lives, and we've created an amazing relationship. If you want to deepen your understanding of your own relationship and learn to access new heights of emotional, sensual, and erotic intimacy, you're in the right place because I will show you how. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, this is Alexandra, and I'm super excited for this interview with Kate and Victor Mangona. I should actually say Dr. Kate Mangona and Dr. Victor Mangona, or as the Emily Posts of the world would tell us, the doctors Mangona. I met Kate, met in quotes. We know one another from social media. And I have to say, I've seen TikToks that the two of you have done. And one of the reasons that I invited you to be guests is because you are each incredibly established, well-trained, busy people in lots of different areas in your lives. Should I call you Dr. Mangona or Kate? What should I actually?
Kate's fine.
Kate. Okay,
Kate's
great.
fine.
So Kate is a pediatric radiologist. Victor is a radiation oncologist, both working with children. And you have all kinds of other professional endeavors and family and so forth. Will you tell in your own words, like, what are the things that take your attention and accomplishments you're proud of that you'd want to set the tone by saying?
Oh, for sure. So we are parents. I am the mother of 2 strong girls, a 1.5-year-old, now 20 months old, and a 3.5-year-old. And we're about to have a 3rd girl.
Oh,
Really? Yeah, really. So we're super excited. That takes up, I would say, a majority of our life outside of our normal work day. Me doing pediatric radiology and him doing radiation oncology. And I think I do that 3 days a week and the hospital. And then 2 days a week, I do coaching. I do relationship coaching, and I do my podcast, which is, how I actually got connected with you because I asked you to be on my Medicine, Marriage, and Money podcast. And
so if anyone wants to look it up, we'll have all that stuff in the show notes, but it's the Medicine, Marriage, and Money podcast.
So outside of the business working days, we spend a majority of our time with our girls and our Penelope poodle, which is our little 7-pound poodle. and so then, it is definitely something we try to prioritize is ourselves, our marriage as well. So the past couple of years, ever since our first daughter turned 1, we really tried to prioritize having date night at least once a week, which we've been really good about sometimes and not so good sometimes. But I have definitely noticed when we do that once a week, things are just a lot better. And that's what I tell myself. What do you think, Victor?
Oh, no, it's absolutely, I agree. It's nice to have our own time because our kiddos, they suck the energy out of.
Yeah, they're like 6 other days. There's 6.5 other days a week that we spend with them.
So absolutely, having some time to ourselves really helps us reset and then also focus on what's really important because after the kids grow up and they're out of the house, we still need to have our own relationship, and we're going to be this. This is a long-term plan, so we have to continue working on it the whole time around.
Okay, so say a little bit more, Victor, because you have a lot of expertise in real estate and money. And I was reminded of that because of the way that you just talked about your relationship. It sounds like in this very nice way, the way people talk about financial planning. It's like you need to focus on the long-term plan. And really, marriage is a long-term plan.
Absolutely. We often focus on so many things financially, but really your marriage is probably the most valuable thing that you have control over. I don't want to say control with the wrong meaning, but that you actually can take care of. There are not many things where, if you look about it, the downside, where you could lose half of your wealth and half of your future earnings. And there are not many things on the other side where you can double your earnings and double your wealth. So it actually, from a very objective point of view, is really the most important investment. But we often don't think about it. We often take it for granted as a given, like we're already married. But marriages, like all relationships, require work. And so you have to foster that. depending, I mean, it might not have to be in terms of hours per day or days per week or however you look at it, might not need to be more than like 50% of your time, even though it is the most valuable thing. It's actually the most bang for your buck for the amount of time and effort you put into it.
Okay, I know the two of you are super nuanced thinkers and extremely multi-passionate. And so I want to go in on something which is actually really nuanced based on what you said, Victor, because in the past, marriage really was a financial and political arrangement. Royalty married their children in order to keep peace between countries and continents. And I think, Bridgerton, which is recently released on Netflix, reminds us how dowries drive things, or the woman would be exchanged for 3 sheep. There's this cultural inheritance of treating a marriage as a financial transaction, and with that, looking at women as property. And that, of course, is completely disgusting to any modern person, not just modern women, but modern person. And you're a proactive modern man. You are devoted to your 2, soon to be 3 daughters. It's clear that the success of your marriage is actually a very soulful endeavor for you. And yet you talk about it in this way that seems like a kind of modern, innovative version of that thing we want to be done with. Is my question clear? Because I'd love to hear what you say. Like, how do you connect the financial statements with what lives in your heart and the choice in choosing your partner?
Yeah, well, when I first met Kate, there was never a financial anything motivation whatsoever when I met her, and there still isn't, because I fell in love with Kate for who she is, and I want to be with Kate for who she is, and that happiness helps both me and her, and that happiness is part of what keeps our emotional health, I think, for the long term. Also, it's really interesting as you see people who are older. There's this thing, that people say as the will to live. And it's so amazing when you see one spouse doesn't survive, how short after another spouse may also die. And I think there's a lot to that. If we think about all the things in our lives that we see and do on a daily basis, very much of it I consider impermanent. But our marriage is the one thing that's always going to be there. At least that's my plan. And so, this goes way beyond the numbers. This is about who we are as people and our happiness. Without our own personal and emotional health, no amount of money will ever actually really matter.
There's something really, to me, unusual and special in what you say. I know I'm going to think about it long after this conversation is over. It might be a little bit too simplistic to put it the way I'm about to, which is that we used to look at marriage as this financial transaction and political arrangement. And in wanting to go away from that and the kind of disrespectful attitudes that implies, we swung all the way to the other side where we focus on love. And there's a way in which you're talking and it brings a pendulum into a more balanced, holistic, and honest viewpoint, which includes erotic chemistry, falling in love, choosing to live together, and the realities of building wealth together as opposed to separately and happening to have your financial stuff in relation to one another too. Is that a fair way? You've thought about this, I'm guessing.
I don't know. I don't honestly think about a lot of things. I'm not.
Well, I have something to add here. It's when we first met, we were both interns. So we had just come out of medical school. So we were both extremely broke, like negative broke. And then we just fell in love. It just, I don't plan those things. I wasn't planning to. Victor was kind of planning to, but I wasn't planning to find love that year. And then it just happened. And I didn't think about money at all. I mean, it's just kind of like when you talk to somebody who goes to medical school, like who goes to medical school to make money? People go to medical school to help other people, to help sick people or sick children. And that's kind of how we looked at it throughout our training. And then that last year of training, in our 6th year, Victor, always thinking ahead, me more thinking like in the moment, he's thinking ahead, like, wow, next year our income is going to like quadruple or whatever it did. And, he probably remembers. I don't really. And he's like, well, we gotta figure this out together because we're now married and we can't just go spending all this money. We've got to figure out what we're going to do with it. So really that process from in our last year of training up until now, 6 years into marriage, our whole financial journey has really been together, like where we've been able to grow our wealth. We've learned about real estate together. I mean, he was a leg up because he kind of grew up in a real estate family, but everything we really learned about single family investing, multifamily investing, we really did together. And he takes me along in like all of the different taxes and financial journeys we go on. So it's kind of like a mutual thing that we just kind of plugged into our relationship.
That's so great. And I want to just say things that the three of us know, but there may be many listeners who don't realize that among the people who default on student loans, I don't have reason to know how this changed during COVID, but previously doctors are one of the largest populations of people who default on student loans. There are many physicians with relatively very large paychecks who live paycheck to paycheck. And so it's very easy to think that what the two of you describe and have achieved is standard, and it's not. It's totally innovative. It's motivated by your own wisdom, passion, whatever has driven you. And I just love hearing about this. I actually want to pivot the conversation because there's something that came up for me in hearing, particularly, Victor, that you're a radiation oncologist, and I want to share. So when I was an intern, I had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old at home. And I remember a month in the pediatric ICU or in similar kinds of situations where people were really sick, and it was just heartbreaking, as any kind of service is where there's a terminal pediatric patient or potentially terminal pediatric patient. And I would come home, honestly, I'd feel a little bit numb. I mean, I had a good bedside manner. My heart was totally open, but I needed to be functional and perform medical duties. And so when I get home, I'd be a little bit numb. And I found that I really needed to put my attention on cultivating, just enjoying normal things. Like, well, I didn't have a child losing a tooth at 3, but like learning to walk and all of these things, which are super exciting and out of the ordinary when life is more status quo. But when you're coming home from radiation oncology in pediatrics, how do you make your transition, both as a parent, but really in the context of the marriage podcast? I want to know, how do you get the joy and the availability for connection going with this woman you love when you spend a good portion of the day in really sad circumstances?
Yeah. So yeah, it is very challenging, and it's gotten more challenging as I've gone further and as I've had kids who've gotten older, and I see my kids in my patients now. When you see patients that are exactly the same age as your kid, and as I've gotten older, I also see more patients that are my age, just because, as you get older, there's more cancer. So when I get home, I am so appreciative of every moment I have with my kids. I wish I had more time with them, but I love spending time with them, and I consider a substantial amount of patience when it comes to my kids. I have a lot less patience with other things outside the house, but when it comes to my kids, I see all the things that they're going through, their developmental milestones and things, their age appropriate behaviors, which can drive parents nuts. And I love it because I'm so thankful that I have kids and that they're healthy. I hug my kid every day, because I go back to work the next day, I see a kid the same age with a brain tumor who's getting treated. And I don't know how long that kid's going to live. And if they live, they are probably going to be hurt from the radiation. And I am just so thankful for every normal thing I have. And then when I, go to work, even though there are times that are really tough, and we're dealing with medicine in the 21st century, which has unbelievable amount of problems. I focus on the fact that I get to help these kids, and not many people have the privilege to take such a substantial role in the care of somebody's life. And I focus on that because it's so easy to focus on all of the other things, which also drive us nuts. But if I focus on the things that really ground me, make me thankful for what I do and what I have, which is, infinite. There's nothing in my life that I am lacking in terms of what I need. And I can really just focus on appreciating everything I have. And I think it makes me a much better parent. I think it makes me a better spouse because I really appreciate these relationships.
Kate, I feel like we have a sense of what your life is like hearing Victor talk about your life and how things live in his soul. How did you choose to get into coaching, given that your life was already full and you have this deep collaborative marriage?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think I took a lot of things for granted the first several years of our marriage. And even though what we say we definitely work on our marriage and we have been, it's not something I think I did fully intentionally the whole time. And then when the pandemic hit, it kind of threw our lives upside down. We were both kind of faced, or several people were faced with the idea that mortality could be around the corner. And Victor moved out into a hotel for a short time because we just weren't sure. We wanted to be as safe as we could. I was in the hospital a lot with patients, and he worked in a clinic with immunocompromised patients. So we were just trying to shelter each other from each other and stay as safe as possible. And this was like before we really knew, before we super implemented masking all the time and social distancing. And so that was really hard for me because I really hadn't been apart from Victor like that for a couple months before. Um, and then just that I even distanced from my kids for a few weeks. And my mom was here helping me out. And we did have an au pair at the time. But I will say our au pair was, although she was very helpful for our baby, our youngest, she was really not helpful for our family. She kind of was got in between, I feel like, our family. And so I was dealing with a lot of like immediate issues. And that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to reach out to the physician community. I have some extra time. Things are slow at work right now because outpatient radiology wasn't doing quite as much. And I joined physician coaching programs. I joined actually two of them in the summer, it's late spring, summer. And it really turned my life right side up again. I still remember my first group coaching session and choosing to talk about marriage. And that's what I talked about. And I needed to know how to show up differently and preparing for that session. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I'm not showing up the way I need to be showing up. And I consider myself, very independent, stubborn at times, maybe not as patient, female physician. And then I'm learning all these things now about how we're taught to be so independent as maybe a young female when that's just not the way it's supposed to be when you're in marriage. I mean, not that I'm dependent on Victor for anything, happiness, money, but we're supposed to not be completely independent of each other. We're supposed to bring our passions together and work together. And so I just kind of worked on myself so much and really found a new passion for myself in relationships and focusing on all the relationships in my life and just completely loving instead of maybe criticizing or blaming or becoming defensive, which, I tended to do and maybe still do and work on daily. And in doing that, I realized I needed to share everything I was learning with everybody else because I remember talking to a couple of my close girlfriends, like, I cannot believe it's taken me 6 years of my marriage to realize this. And one of my girlfriends, she's like, Kate, some people never realize this. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. And so then I knew I had something to share. And it might have not all come from within me because I had all these power couples that I was surrounded with all the time. I mean, I had already been going to financial conferences and different kinds of conferences with Victor because that is what he is super passionate about, and been meeting all these power couples for the past couple of years. And I had kind of been a cheerleader for Victor and for everybody else, and still wondering where I fit into this puzzle. And then I realized, well, you know what? I know what I'm going to do now. I'm going to interview all these power couples, get all these keys or these little tokens, these little golden tokens, and share it with the world while I'm also taking notes and implementing it into my own life. And I even forgot what your original question is, but
Okay, well, It was how you got into coaching, but there's something in your story that I just really, really want to underline. Actually, a few different things. But one is that, first of all, there wasn't a major problem. I mean, yes, there were the circumstances, the extra challenges of living separately for 3 months, but there wasn't a major problem. And you chose to put attention on it. And you went first. Like you did all of this yourself, which then brought benefit to the marriage. And one of the really important things that I coach when I'm working with couples and have written about in my book and so forth is that so often people think that a great marriage is 50-50. And that just isn't the case. What makes for a really great marriage is when both people take 100% responsibility. But even if one person takes 100% responsibility for the quality of the marriage, the whole thing transforms and improves. And I think your story just illustrates how much depth and profound impact comes from one person doing this personal growth work. Not that Victor's a slouch, but it wasn't where his attention was.
Oh yes, it was. Yeah, and he noticed, right? He noticed I was doing this work. Not that I was perfect at it, but I think he noticed I was trying, and I pulled him in slowly to my coaching world. Like, this is amazing. You've got to try this out. Like, we can look at all of the things, like he was saying, all the things that go wrong in our life, all the efficiencies you want to, change at work. We can look at these a slightly different way and still be super, super passionate at home and happy at home.
I want to follow up on that verb that you pulled him in, because I happen to encounter many women who feel like they're really motivated for personal growth and they're with a guy who isn't. And so did you actually like pull him in? You took a lasso and made it tighter? Did you seduce him? Did you rationally present it? Did you just start living a different way of being? And he was like, hey, I want some of that. What was it actually?
Okay, well, we're gonna have to ask him, but I feel like I was slightly living a different way of being. We'll have to ask him what he felt like about that. But then what I did next is I asked one of my coaches if I could sign him up for her program. And he's like, and she said, no, you can't just sign him up.
Right. That is what a new coach and an excited wife does. That is not what an experienced coach or a wise wife does. I love that.
She said, no, you need to talk to him about this. He needs to have to consent because this is a lot of work. This is going to be at least, 7 or 8 hours of work a week. And I'm like, okay. And I was nervous. Believe me, I was nervous. I was thinking about this for a day. I knew like the deadline was coming up. I waited. Like I had been presented with this program for a month and had waited till the very last day. And I sent Victor an email. And I think I forget if I forwarded him the link, and I just sent him the email. This is what I want you to do. And I said, I am willing to pay for it. I told him, I am willing to pay for it, because even though most of our money is mutual, we do have our separate fund money accounts.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I will pay for it. I think, and I even forget what I said, but I was basically like, you are going to get so much out of this. Like, you won't believe what I got out of the last 2 months of my coaching. You've just got to try this out for yourself. And he responded back that he just didn't have time. And
the money was not really an issue.
The money was not the issue. But
and at this point, this is because I want to just kind of bring back the curtain a little bit. You were working so much less than you were working.
Right.
And I was working the exact opposite. I was working more hours than I had in years.
Because all the telemedicine patients were defaulting to him because he already had telemedicine.
So I was getting all this increased patient load, and I didn't have a nurse. And we're doing this all by telemedicine. So now I am the nurse, I am the MA, I am the physician. I'm doing everything.
And he was super stressed out. So I
was working till like 11 o'clock at night, yes. Like routinely. So finding 8 hours a week, that's like there wasn't 8 hours.
And we thought it was like 3 hours a week at that point. But I said, Victor, I responded, I was like, I'm going to give you the time. I'm like, when you come home, because I think he was planning on moving back home by that point out of the hotel. And whereas previously we did things together, or I expected him to help out more at home with the girls because he really didn't have that much time at home with the girls. So I wanted him to help out with dinner time or bath time or bedtime. I said, these 3 nights of the week, because it was every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, for these 2 hours, you are off the hook. I am doing whatever, dinner time, bedtime, bath time, no complaints from me, no expectations from me with our girls, which is a big deal because I am definitely a more anxious, impatient parent.
Like
than Victor
I
is.
like doing bedtime and bath time. Let's just make
And
this clear.
I do
like
not.
that's like my favorite time with the kids.
This is my least favorite time. I like the morning time. So this was a big deal for me. And I was like, I'm going to be doing it. And you're
it was
gonna be
hard
doing
because
this.
I had to give up the only hours I actually
But
could
it was just for
see.
9 weeks,
I
8
know.
or 9 weeks.
I
And so
know.
I said, your family needs this. We all in this household need this. And so he was like, okay.
Yeah,
And-
Victor, what was the thing that had you actually say, yes, I get that probably your inclination to long-term planning was relevant, but what else?
Well, she said it was important to her. Okay. And she doesn't actually often say that. Like in my world, if I tell her, okay, this is really important, please, whatever. Like in my world, if something's really, really important, I would trust my spouse that it's that important and just do it.
Whether or not she understands or sees the importance, if it's important to you, that's reason to do it.
Right. Yes. If something's important, like and she doesn't use that term very often.
I
like
never had used that term.
she doesn't, right? So like she said, this is like important to me. I said, okay, well, if it's important to you, then I'm gonna do it. But we need to find a way to make it feasible. And she said that I will make it feasible for you. So they said, okay, as long as we're on the same page, because I can't take those hours, do this program, and also at the exact same time, do all of these other things that have been expected of me to be done, which I enjoy doing, because it's just not feasible. And so we had to be on the same page about all of it.
Okay, I totally get it. And this is the segue into the question that I ask all guests, which is that I really believe that relationships are the ultimate context for personal growth, for individual growth. So my question to each of you, I'll start with you, Victor, is what have you learned about yourself as a result of being married to Kate?
Oh my gosh. What have I learned about myself? Wow. As a result of being married to Kate. Wow. That's a tough question. Well, I mean, so about the coaching, I have actually considered coaching for over a year now. It's just something that hadn't been done. And she helped push me over and getting it done.
Oh, getting coached. You mean?
Getting coached. Right. Yes. If it weren't for Kate, I would not have gone through the program for certain this past summer. That was not going to have happened. So I'm in a completely different place now than I otherwise would have been.
As a result of being coached.
Yes. I mean, all these superpowers that I have now, I'm a lot less stressed, a lot happier, less burned out. There have been some other changes in circumstances along the way, but primarily related to coaching directly.
I know. We should
Beautiful.
just keep doing it.
What about you, Kate? What have you learned about yourself as a result of being married to Victor?
What have I learned about myself? Yeah, I've learned that, well, I used to think I was really patient with everybody and everything. And as a parent, he's like 100 times more patient than me. And I work on it daily. I mean, it's something I work on daily, and some days I do better and some days I do better, but I don't. But I've realized that there's always more patience to be had. Uh, and that's as a parent. What else have I learned? I've learned that I can do anything. I used to really put all of these limits on myself. I never thought it would be possible to do, 1/4 of the things that we do together. When we first got, the year after we got married, bought a house. I never thought we were going to buy in an area I never thought we'd buy in, and we didn't do it, lavishly or to be luxurious or, have some sort of outward display. We did it in a very strategic investment manner. And I really didn't understand it at the time, but then we started Airbnb-ing it, less than a year later. Or just
that was one of the things on social media that caught my attention. You two have this amazing TikTok about leaving your home every weekend and getting the Airbnb funds, which are higher than your paychecks from your hospital jobs. Is amazing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, higher than my paycheck. It's just the mindset. Like and I grew up with wonderful, amazing parents who told me I could do anything I wanted to do. So I know that's not the problem. It had to be something internal inside of me, or I feel like, I don't know, things in society, things I read, shows I watched, I just really believed like I really couldn't achieve all these things maybe other people could achieve. And then, or even do things that nobody else did, right? Like what other dual physician couple moves out of their house every weekend, and
With kids,
with au pair,
diapers.
yes, with a dog, sometimes with the whole family. Like sometimes it happens over a Thanksgiving or a Christmas. And the whole family is here. We're like, everybody, we're moving somewhere else for the week. And just to think beyond like the small numbers, like, oh, I would have to buy 2 of this. Do we have to buy 2 cribs and 2 changing tables? That's going to be too much. One to put in maybe a apartment and one to put here. And Victor's like, think big, beyond the picture. Like, this is what it's going to make us, and this is what it's going to cost us. I mean, also the same thing with like student loan debt. I was so anxious and scared about student loan debt. And I used to throw money at my student loans whenever I got the chance as a resident. And Victor taught me how to invest at a higher interest rate and get my student loans down to a lower interest rate. So like just really thinking differently about what I could do and what I could achieve. I mean, a lot more. There's a lot more. That's just okay.
Well, I love that. And I'd love to hear from each of you how listeners can follow you. And before you do, I just want to say that if you're listening and this spoke to you, follow them, because in addition to being super smart, super successful, super innovative and passionate, you two are so fun. And I have to say that I have so much respect and admiration for all the qualities and accomplishments that I'm aware of the two of you doing. But I think one of the things I have the most admiration for is how, after all of the medical training and all of the responsibility and obligations and all of the things that modern life is, you two seem to have a lot of fun, and that is evident in the ways that people can follow you on social media. So if someone wants to find you, Kate, what's the best way to do that?
Oh gosh. Okay. So I'm on Facebook. I have if you're a physician listening, I have a group, Medicine, Marriage, and Money. I also am on TikTok, Kate Mangona, MD. I'm on Instagram. I have my Medicine, Marriage, and Money, and the Salsa Kitty Kate on Instagram.
Okay, and we'll have all that in the show
on
notes.
my podcast for sure. Yeah, for sure. Listen to my podcast because I've got.
What's your podcast called again?
Medicine, Marriage, and Money, and Alexandra Stockwell, Dr. Alexandra Stockwell, will be featured in a February episode. So I'm not sure when this is coming out, but yeah, she's going to be.
That'll be before. So we'll link to that. And you have all these great names for ways of finding you, and it'll all be in the show notes. So no one needs to remember that just from saying so.
Perfect.
Okay. And what about you, Victor?
So I do Facebook and YouTube live finance shows about 3 times a week or so. My Facebook group is the best place to find me. It's 39.6 community with a decimal point 6. If you go to the YouTube channels, youtube.com/39point 6 number 6. And I'm going to probably get to, I'm thinking 150 something videos in there that I've done. And that's the best place. If you have questions for me, if you post them in the group, I tend to answer them on subsequent shows. Okay.
And who's the right audience for those amazing Facebook Lives in your group?
It's really for anybody who is A, very high income, or a couple who's very high income, or B, interested in real estate investing, whether it's long-term rentals or short-term rentals. Those are the 2 key demographics that I target and the content kind of addresses.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I love that the two of you chose to fit in your schedule this conversation, and hope that anyone listening will follow up with both of you, because you just are so engaging and ambassadors for a whole new way of living that is so appealing and includes all of it.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you for coming here.
So flattering. Well, thank you. This was so fun. And this is the perfect start to our Saturday date night.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Marriage Podcast. Please rate and review the show on iTunes. It really makes a difference. And if you have a question or a comment, reach out to me via my website at alexandrastockwell.com.